Okay, I have a grocery haul this week. My staycation is coming to an end, so it is time to think about it. My plan for the coming week is to make a shepherd's pie, a beef with beef, not lamb. And I also was thinking of making a soup, but when I was grocery shopping, they had these mixes on sale, and so I thought I'd give this a try. So I bought 2 of these chicken stew mixes. So I bought some aluminum foil pans because I want to make a little bit extra of the shepherd's pie and put in the freezer for another day. Some bread, sour cream, celery, onion, bay leaves because I was out, some beef broth for the pie, a couple containers of chicken broth for the soup, cauliflower because I'm going to cut some of the carbs with shepherd's pie by mixing cauliflower in with the potatoes. I already have potatoes, so I didn't need to buy those. Diced tomatoes, some corn. I have peas and corn in the freezer as well. This is more for a snack. My boyfriend likes to eat corn. And then for fruit, I bought some strawberries and of course some cherries. So now it's time to get prepping. Okay, so it's time to make the shepherd's pie. So I will include the link to the recipe that I am mostly following, but as you know by now, I always mix things up. So the recipe is for a low carb shepherd's pie and basically uses cauliflower instead of potatoes. I'm doubling the recipe and I'm doing potatoes and cauliflower. So I'm doing a mix. I have 1 head of cauliflower and 6 medium potatoes. So we're going to boil this until fork tender. Okay, so while the cauliflower and potato are boiling, we're going to get the meat mixture ready. So I have some avocado oil in here. The recipe called for olive oil. Just use what you got. And we are going to add onion, celery, and carrots. And like always, I just kind of eyeballed these. The recipe calls for 1 small onion. I cut up 1 large. It calls for 1 cup of celery. I don't know, I cut up almost the entire bunch of celery I had. And then 2 medium carrots. And remember, I am doubling the recipe, so everything you see here would be twice what you would normally put in for the regular recipe. It does call for cloves of garlic, but I'm lazy and I have minced garlic. And it did say 2 cloves, so we'll do 4. I have no idea what the equivalent is, but I like garlic, so I'm just going to put a couple of spoons in. Now the recipe did call for ground chicken. I am opting to use ground beef. Again, it's what I have on hand. And let me go get that ready. And once this has been sauteing for a bit, we'll add that in. So the recipe called for 1 1/4 pounds of ground meat, which is just a silly number. Most ground meat packages come in pound packages, so I'm not going to open another pack just to get the 1/4 pound. Or in this case, I would need an extra 1/2 pound, so I am just putting 2 pounds in. So a little less meat. Not the end of the world. I think I've compensated with additional veggies. So I saw somebody using on one of their videos a type of tool that helps break up ground meat. I don't know what it's called. Do any of you guys have one of them? Do you like it? Is it helpful? This is not very good. I usually just end up using like a wooden spoon. I'm just curious. It's kind of got like it's circular, and then it's got like all the little blades in it, but it's just like a plastic, I think. Just like a plastic utensil. Anyways, I'm just curious. If you have one, do you use it? Is it worth getting? Okay, so we're just going to brown this up, let this cook, and then I'll be back to show you the next step. So there is quite a bit of liquid. I am going to drain some of this off. We are going to be adding some broth later, and I don't want this to be too soupy. So we will be draining some of this. I am just going to just use a scoop, and I've already started, so I've almost got a full cup. Okay, so to help with the liquid that is left, we're going to add a little bit of flour. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons for a single recipe. Again, I'm doing double, but I'm just going to start with 2 and see how that looks. If I need to add more or not, I can always do that. Okay, that is looking good. So we're going to add the broth. It asked for 3/4 cups of broth. Now I chose beef broth because I'm using beef. The recipe says chicken because of course they were using chicken. 3/4 of a cup is about half a can. That's the can that I'm using. And because I'm doubling it, I can use the whole can. I think it's a little, it's about almost 1 3/4 cups instead of 1 1/2. But because I drained all that other liquid, I'm okay with that. I think we'll be all right. So we're going to add that, and then we're going to add some tomato paste, parsley, bay leaf, salt, and pepper. So let me get that going. Okay, so the recipe calls for 1 bay leaf, doubling it. So we are going to throw 2 in. This will be removed before we put in the oven. I have no parsley. I thought I did, but I don't have any. So I just have some Italian seasoning. I'm going to use that instead. I think that will be okay. If not, I guess I'll be in trouble. So it was 2 tablespoons of parsley. I think this is more potent than that. So I'm just going to put in maybe 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. Why not? And then we need to throw in some tomato paste. It says 3 tablespoons. I'm just going to throw the whole can in because again I'm doubling. I've got to think it's got to be close to 6. So that's what we're going to do. Just like so. And then add some salt and pepper. Now I did sneak in some salt and pepper earlier, but I will add a little bit more after I taste this. So let's give this a good mix and let this cook for a bit. Okay, so I definitely added some more salt. It was a little bit acidic, probably because I added too much tomato paste, but it looks good. The salt helped. I think I'm in a little bit more Italian seasoning as well. We're going for it. We're not even going to measure it. And we're just going to set this to cook for a little bit, just for the flavors to blend. I mean, pretty much all is cooked at this point, but we want this to absorb some of the flavors like the bay leaf and stuff. And while that's doing, we're going to move on to the potato cauliflower mash. Okay, so I drained the potatoes and cauliflower, and I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter. The recipe calls for half a cup of sour cream. I just bought an 8-ounce container. That's all I got. Don't know if it's double or not, and I'm not using it for anything else, so it's all going to go in. It's part of the thing when you live by yourself. A lot of times you have to buy this stuff for these recipes, but then you never have an opportunity to use the rest of it up. Okay, so I got a new to me tool. I actually bought an immersion blender, and we're going to give this a try. Never used one before in all my years, so this should be interesting. Okay, maybe that was too much sour cream. It's a little soupy. Oh well, it is what it is. We are going to add some cheese to this, so maybe that will help. Okay, so the recipe calls for a half a cup of cheddar, so we'll need a full cup. I'm actually going to use Colby Jack, and it's already shredded. good news is it'll spread easy. They did say to add salt and pepper to taste. I did not do that. And I think I'm gonna skip because I put a little bit of extra salt in the meat, so I think that'll be fine. Okay, so now it's time to assemble. One last step for the meat mixture is to add the frozen corn and peas. That's all the corn I have for frozen, so it might not be 2 cups. You needed a cup. And then the peas are in a solid block, so I'm just giving them a partial defrost. This is the bag I have. I'm just going to throw it all in. Again, measurement's not my strong. But like I said, I'm shorting on meat, so we can compensate for it with the vegetables. And that doesn't look like too much. I think that looks just about right. Okay, now it's time for assembling. I spared you the agony of watching me dish this out. I'm such a messy cook. Anyway, so I have done 4 pans. This is in a glass one. This will be my meals for this week. Obviously, this isn't enough for an entire week's worth of meals. It's probably about 4 servings. But that's okay because I've been finding that, you know, go out for dinner one night a week or something, and then I'm also going to be making some soup. So between that and then just some veggies and stuff, I should be fine. And then 3 of these are going to go in the freezer. Okay, so now let's add the potato cauliflower topping. Okay, so here they are all done. I added a little bit of cheese on top. I'm just going to let these cool down and then before putting them in the freezer. And I am not exactly sure how I'm going to wrap them. They came with plastic cover trays, which I will probably use, but I think I'm also probably going to cover them in foil or saran wrap. I'm going to do a little bit of research on that. And now it's time to move on to the soup. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, this is the soup mix that I picked up from Ralph's. It was on sale, so I thought I'd give it a try. It's actually saying it's a stew mix. Additional ingredients you'll need are butter, onion, flour, chicken broth, and cooked chicken. So I don't have any cooked chicken, but I have some uncooked chicken. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the onion and chicken at the same time and then follow the instructions roughly, of course, as they've indicated. I'm also going to add some celery because I had some celery left over from my shepherd's pie and I just want to use it up. So let's get the butter melting in the pot. And because I don't have patience, we're going to throw the onions in already. Again, don't follow me for cooking techniques. And the celery. And you'll also notice that I have a few beans, like 4 beans in there. That's from my little garden that I have on my balcony. My beans are struggling, and I get a few beans every now and then, but not enough to make a meal. So I'm just throwing them into dishes wherever I can. Okay, so we're going to let this cook for a bit, soften up the onions, and then we'll add the chicken. The package calls for 2 to 3 cups cooked chicken. I only have 1 chicken breast that I have chopped up. I think that's plenty. I'm trying to eat a little less meat or not go overboard on it anyways. Okay, I will be back to show you when I add that. Okay, time to add the chicken. And I will let this go until the chicken is cooked, and then we'll move on to the next step. By the way, I was looking at the ingredients for this soup mix, and it is pretty basic. So it has navy bean, carrot, potato, onion, peas, celery, yellow bell peppers, thyme, bay leaf, and sage. So I think it would be super easy to make this stew yourself without the soup mix. Obviously, you can just use fresh ingredients instead of dried. Okay, so the chicken is mostly cooked. It's not completely cooked, but that's okay because this is going to cook for a little while. I'm adding a 1/4 cup of flour to act as a thickener, because again, this is supposed to be more a stew than a soup. But I'm actually going to add a little more liquid than the recipe calls for, and that is because I'm going to use 32-ounce containers, and I don't want any partials. You're getting a theme here, right? I just like to use everything up. The recipe on the package calls for 6 cups, so 48 ounces of chicken broth, which is what I'm going to add next. I'm using 2 different containers. I'm using this one, and I better add it before this burns. And the second one I'm using is a low sodium version. So I'm kind of mixing both so I don't get too much sodium, but I still want a little bit. The instructions say to stir in the broth, bring it to a simmer, and then stir until thickened, because there's a little more extra broth in here. I'm not sure how thick it will get, but I'm not too worried about it. I will come back once this is a little bit thickened and simmered for a bit. Okay, guys, this is why I hate to cook. I'm already bored waiting for this to come to a simmer and thicken, and I just would much rather do something else. So I'm just going to do the next step now so that I don't have to worry about it and go from there. So we are going to add the contents of the stew mix, and if you're using pre-cooked chicken, you would add it at this point, but my chicken's already in there. Okay, so if I was following the instructions, I would bring this to a boil, then reduce heat, and simmer covered for 30 minutes. It'll probably be longer than 30 minutes because I want it to thicken up a little bit, and I didn't wait long enough before adding this, but that's okay. So I am going to wait till this comes to a boil, which should be hopefully not too much longer, and then I will turn it down, put a lid on it, and simmer it for a while, and then come back and show you the end results. Okay, so I think this is the finished product. It's not too thick, but it's not too soupy. Now, I did add some additional flavorings. I added some garlic, some salt, pepper, and some red pepper flakes. Just needed a little bit of a kick. So, this looks good. That one's done. Now all that's left is to throw this in the oven and bake it for 20 to 25 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're done. I put the other ones in the freezer, so yeah, so we're just about finished. Okay, so I had placed this in the oven for 25 minutes. It's looking pretty good. I'm just gonna let this cool down a little bit, and then it'll be time to eat. Okay, so the texture's a little gloopy. In other words, it's not gonna come out in a nice, you know, rectangle that the original person posted on their website, but not too bad, and I'm sure it'll taste just fine. So now that that's done, it's time to eat and then clean up the kitchen.